all. This is Bruce Dorr-Palin from the National Housing Resource Center, and Matthew Goodrow from the center is also on the call as well. So today we won't have any guests. We're just going to wing it on our own and try to bring people up to date on a number of things that have been happening in our programs that you should be aware of. I think all of these will be part of the dialogue of what we're trying to figure out and what we're trying to accomplish in the year coming. And just to remind everybody, if you aren't able to make the leaders call, we do make an effort to post these on our website within several days of the call, and you have a chance to catch up. Last call 2 weeks ago was with Sarah Jarik. Has that been posted, Matthew?
Yeah, they're usually posted within a few hours of the call.
Great. Okay, good. So it was a great call, and she was her usual self, dealing, I think, with some of the big issues in our work, but also talking about the specifics around HUD. And if you weren't able to catch it, you can catch it on the line. And obviously, we'll spend a great deal more time with her in LA in our meeting. But let's dive in. This is going to be a little bit more relaxed call than usual. We don't have any guests, and we're going to just take it one step at a time without all the rush we normally have. So let's start out with the quick updates that we've got. We had a busy week before last. We spent most of it in D.C. So Matthew, what's the story on our visits to the Hill and D.C.?
Yes, and we had some meetings also off the Hill that we'll get into a little bit later. But we spent Bruce and I, and we had some folks along with us at different points, including Jan McNerney, who's on the call. So thanks to everyone that was able to join us for our visits. But we had very busy days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of last week, we met with 16 different congressional offices and committee office as well. We had 8 visits on the House side and 8 on the Senate side. We met with 5 Republicans, 11 Democrats. So really a nice balanced kind of meeting agendas that we had. We talked a lot about a few different issues related to housing counseling, but our primary concerns were federal funding for housing counseling, integrating housing counseling into the mortgage, the lending process and the servicing process. We talked about the Mortgage Forgiveness Tax Relief Act, and we talked about language access. Were really the big issues that we wanted to talk about. We were meeting with members of both the appropriations committees and the financial services, or on the Senate side, the banking committee. Just a few highlights to share. We met with representative from Representative Ellison's office. Keith Ellison is the representative for Minneapolis, and he's very progressive. He's actually the chair of the Progressive Caucus. We had a really good conversation with his housing staff person. He's got a lot of different bills that he's working on that are related to housing issues. So we talked about some of the work that he's doing, but they were also very interested in hearing about the work that we're doing. In particular, they were very interested, as were a few other offices, in hearing about the language access issues. And they actually asked us to submit a question that he used. We think he used. I actually just got the link to the hearing, but in a hearing where they were questioning OCC and FDIC and some other regulators. So he brought up the language access issue with those folks. Another kind of highlight of the 3 days of meetings was a conversation with Representative Latham's staff person, his actually senior appropriation staff person. So Representative Latham is on the House side the chair of the THUD committee for the THUD subcommittee for appropriation. So he obviously has a lot to do with what number comes out on the House side for housing counseling funding. We had a really long, frank conversation with Doug Bobbitt, who's his senior guy, and really covered a lot of, we talked about issues there had been in the past. So Doug Bobbitt had been shared information with us before that prior to the zeroing out, that there was concern with the Republicans about some of the more kind of operational issues with HUD, less about housing counseling as an industry. So we talked about those concerns. It seems like the impression we got from him is that the Republicans and people on the Hill generally have been pretty impressed with changes that HUD has made, which is certainly encouraging going forward in terms of restoring some of that funding. So obviously the number now is $45 million. We'd like to get it back up to the $87.5 that it was just a few years ago, and then go up from there. But so it's certainly encouraging that those concerns seem to be dissipating on the Republican side. One other thing with federal funding, so there's some rumors that we're hearing that President Obama's budget, which is due out March 4th, he'll be releasing his proposed budget, that there may be some shifting of funding from NFMC into the HUD Housing Counseling budget. We made clear to all of the folks we met with and really spend a lot of time with it on folks on the different appropriations committees that we were okay with that as long as it didn't result in as long as there was no net loss for housing counseling. So any money that came from came out of NFMC that we wanted to see back into the HUD Housing Counseling. And obviously the reason for that is that money in the HUD Housing Counseling budget is a lot more flexible, and it's also a lot more stable. So we're happy to see dollars making that move as long as there isn't a net loss. And just real quickly, I'll touch on something we've been working a lot on is the Mortgage Tax Forgiveness Relief Act. That's the bill that keeps homeowners who receive a principal reduction from having to claim that as taxable income. It's really no quick way of saying it. It's just a mess. There's a package of tax extenders, they're called. This is uncontroversial, but there are other more controversial ones mixed in, and they're kind of all being stuck together now. There's the few other things they were hoping to try to get comprehensive tax reform done. That's not happening, but they had been kind of holding it for that. And the other thing is on the Senate side that the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, Max Baucus, just accepted or just was confirmed to become the ambassador to China. So there's going to be a change now in the chairmanship there. So it's just all these different factors that are holding this up. But again, the issue is not now and hasn't been support for extending this. It's just more kind of logistical things that are keeping it from happening. The bottom line on it is that it's really important for us to keep the pressure on, for folks to be, if you haven't called your senator, if you haven't called your House member, absolutely make those calls. Really just takes a minute and just let them know that the folks that you work with are depending on this being extended. I'll be doing some outreach. So Oregon has become very important again because Ron Wyden, the senator from Oregon, is going to be taking over as the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. So I'll be doing some outreach. But if you're on the call and you're from Oregon, Senator Wyden is going to be very important now. We need to get pressure on him to get this bill moved. So that was my not-so-quick update on our Hill visits. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Good. I think you've covered a lot of ground, and that's good. And just to underline a couple things, so if you're from Oregon, you can help us move forward the Mortgage Forgiveness Tax Relief Act. So please contact Matthew right away. His email address is all over our listserv and on these on the PowerPoint for this presentation. But you could be very vital, and it's a relationship that you'll want to develop, and now's the time. Second thing is that a lot of housing advocates are working on this issue about getting the extension. We've gotten some requests from the media for examples of people who are being harmed because the extension didn't happen January 1st. And this is always very hard to find, but if you've got somebody who has got a principal reduction since January 1st it would become taxable income and has to decide whether to take this or not, or somebody's in that situation, at least in the bind of getting a principal reduction since January 1st, please let us know, and we'll try to hopefully they'll be willing to talk to the media, and we can connect them to the media as well, because this will humanize the problem that we're having in the field. And the last thing, just underscore what Matthew said, is that there's a possibility that the President's budget will look a little bit differently between Housing Counseling and NFMC, and we're hoping that what will happen is some of the money that's NFMC money will migrate to Housing Counseling funds. So we won't know until March 4th when the budget comes out, but that's one we'll be following closely. And after that, we'll make a special effort to try to reach out to people in the House and Senate. And we'll talk about this more in future calls, but Matthew's working on a whole system to try to really build up support, senator by senator, representative by representative, to get decent funding for both Housing Counseling and NFMC. So we'll keep you informed as soon as we know about what happens with the budget.
Just to address one quick question, so someone asked if there was a chance of a standalone bill for the Mortgage Forgiveness Tax Relief Act, rather than including it as part of a package of tax extenders. So we were not meeting with folks from the Senate Finance Committee or the House Committee, so we don't have great intelligence on that. But it seems like for now, it's probably not going to happen. It seems like they're just kind of holding on to all of these things together, both the popular and the kind of controversial, and it just seems to be a logjam right now. So as of now, it doesn't. Their head in the past looked like there was some chance of a standalone bill. It doesn't look like it right now, but that could change.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word we'd heard is that it's so difficult to get anything through, particularly in the House, that doing it as a package was the most viable path. But Matthew is following this very closely. Good. So we're looking forward to our Leaders in Housing Counseling meeting in Los Angeles this coming Wednesday. We were hoping to have 100 people. We now have 115 people signed up for it, so we're pretty much at a full house. But I think it's going to be very interesting. We will have some fairly detailed conversations. Sarah Jarek will be with us, and we'll do a deep dive into the trying to create a model for FHA mortgage lending that will create incentives for the home buyer to come to counseling, build in some way for paying for funding, and create a kind of a long-term funding stream. But there's lots of technical questions about how to do this, and I think there's things we need to think about as an industry about our performance and our ability to make this a long-term program that has high success. So this should be a really good conversation. I think what she said that on our call 2 weeks ago is very true, that it if this comes through and comes through in a way we'd like it to see, that this could revolutionize our business and might be imitated by people in the private market as well. So this is an opportunity for us to restructure the way our work works, so it could be very exciting. We'll also have an opportunity to talk with Sarah and Farina Lam has done a lot of work in the HUD task force on trying to improve the issues around reporting and site visits and things like that. We'll have a free-floating conversation with her around HUD issues. There'll be a number of HUD staff there as well. So we'll be able to kind of elevate the concerns people have and hopefully frame some solutions and be clear about the concerns that people have. But we'll have lots of other discussions as well. We'll be talking about the how to make ourselves more effective on Capitol Hill and with local congressional offices, and thinking that Matthew's going to be doing on this spring on trying to make ourselves more effective. We will do some thinking about how to make our network work more effectively, so that we are going to be able to do more with the fact that we're as large as we are, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the call. We're going to pick up where we left off on the whole question of what do we call ourselves, and are we ready to change our name and to this certified housing advisor, and there's some sort of, if we choose that, there's some other things we have to figure out, like what do we call the industry. Do we call ourselves HUD Certified Housing Advisory or Advisors, or is there some other way we want to phrase it and think about it? We're getting close to the point where we need to make a decision as an industry about what the next step is. I think we're partway there, but hopefully this conversation will help us get to a much finer point on it all. We'll also have a chance to have kind of a dialogue with three of the kind of people who have influenced our industry in different ways. Eileen Fitzgerald, who is the CEO at NeighborWorks, and I mean, many of you know her through the NFMC funding stream, but in fact, NeighborWorks is doing a lot of work in this field, doing major studies, implementing programs. There's lots of conversations going on, not just with her, but with her organization, but with many organizations. So the idea is that let's hear from her and dialogue with her about what opportunities there are. We'll also have Sarah Jarek on the panel here. This will allow her to talk, I think, in a little different context. So normally we talk with her specifically about very specific HUD issues, but she is talking to all of us in the industry, or many of us in the industry, has a bigger, broader perspective on things. It's always really helpful when we get to hear her view of that, which I think elevates the conversation. And then Hala Farid, who is at Citibank, and it was originally a counselor many years ago in New York City, she's helped really lead Citi into a world where they're investing heavily in housing counseling in terms of funding, support, and infrastructure. But she's also she's in our weeds. She does see our organizations and how we work, and has some strong opinions about technologies we should be using and things like that. So the idea was, let's get them all three on a panel, get them to open up with a few words, and then let's see where the conversation takes us. I think we are becoming a lot more sophisticated in industry, and we use these meetings in some ways to be the springboard for what NHRC will work on in the next year, but it's also an opportunity to kind of think big and ambitiously, and that's so we hope that conversation will happen in the meeting there. Partly we're going to be counting on you to chip in with your thoughts as well. It should be a very good day, and you will all have earned a chance to get a drink at the reception afterwards. Sounds good. As a corollary to this, one of the things that we are really asking of you is, here we are, we've got over 50 groups now, or members of NHRC. I think we're closing in on 60 groups now. We have about 750 managers of housing counseling programs on the listserv. We regularly have 80 to 150, 170 on the last call, 180 on the last call of you on the phone. I mean, we are kind of a big presence out there. We're a major employer in the social service sector. We are influential in we're beginning to really become influential in housing policy. We are definitely an implementation program for many of the programs that the administration is doing around housing. Is there a way that we can start thinking about ourselves more as a unit, and what advantages does that provide? And maybe we should figure out other discounts, and what would those be that enough of us would buy, could get from a common provider if they gave us a discount. Maybe it's some communications thing that would be helpful for you guys to communicate better with each other. Maybe there's we had a really big success with the Back to Work directory, and it's I continue to hear from industry people as well as counselors that this is a tool that's been very useful, and we still get groups signing up for it. So are there other directories that we could create? and maybe we need a and maybe it's not a directory. Maybe it's a directory to find a counselor, but maybe it's also a directory that might provide resources that counselors need every day, and that your staff might need to access. And are there things we could do that would make your lives and your work easier? You know, other things we could do that would be fun and exciting, entertaining. Are there topics we need to do webinars on? I mean, we're not going to be a training organization. There's lots of good training organizations in the business already. NCLR, NCRC, NeighborWorks, they're all doing an excellent job. Our job is really to kind of complement what everybody else is doing and build on it. So, but we could do mini trainings that maybe we're more nimble and could do something quickly. Like, when a good example was when NCLR and we got together on the servicing standards. Are there some things that would be very useful to your groups? So anyways, we have this survey, which is, you know, really it's just here's a few things you can think about. What are your ideas? And so you can pick and choose what questions you want to answer and what ideas you want to put out there. You know, I think feel free to go wild. We're interested in thinking big, and we're also interested, I should point out, we're also interested in thinking small, right? I mean, so if everybody buys one small thing, and if we could get a discount for it, you know, we should feel okay about being granular and specific if that's helpful, and you can think of things that be useful for you. So, so anyways, put us to work for you, and let's figure out what we can do together that might make all of our work better. And that deadline, I'm sorry, is tomorrow, close of business, because we'd like to have the results for the meeting in LA. So let's see. So speaking of surveys, we just had our meeting with FHFA a week ago Monday, and I think the big thing was that they had asked us to do a survey on the non-bank servicing companies. And Matthew, how did that go? What did we find in our survey?
Yeah, so it went great, actually. So this was just really a kind of a whirlwind survey. We put it out. It was open for, I think, less than 2 days, but we had 63 responses, which is great. And thanks to everyone on the call that was able to send us a response. But in FHFA, we sent them a summary of the results and the data that we collected in advance of the meeting, and they were very interested. They wanted to actually lead the meeting with talking about that survey, which I think is a testament to the value in folks responding to those. So just to kind of summarize, we asked about 7 servicers, and these are non bank servicers. So the 7 in particular we asked about were NationStar, Greentree, Ceteris, Ocwen, Quicken Loans, Provident Funding, and PennyMac Loan Services. And you know, they're taking over a growing slice of the servicing industry, and there's been a lot of interest in how effective or how good of a job these companies are doing at servicing. So it was kind of a mixed bag as far as the results go. There were a few that folks weren't familiar enough with, so we just had a few responses, some good, some bad. So that was Provident Funding and Quicken were the ones we didn't get much on. For some, it was a mixed bag. PennyMac and Ocwen were the 2 that there was roughly pretty closely split in terms of positive responses and negative responses. Kind of interestingly, Ocwen was by far the most divisive, where some people were really big fans of Ocwen and you know, had really positive things to say, and some folks considered them hands down the worst. So that was kind of interesting. And then there were the three remaining. There was, I would say, not overwhelmingly, but primarily negative responses. So that was Greentree, Ceteris, and NationStar, where a handful of people had something good to say, but by and large, it was negative feedback that we got on those. But this, you know, the non-bank servicing, they've been getting a lot of attention, mostly following, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, the regulator in New York blocked the transfer of servicing rights to Ocwen, saying that he wasn't confident that they've grown so quickly that he wasn't absolutely confident that they could handle taking on 4 million additional loans. And so just today it was in the news that Maxine Waters, who's the ranking member on the House Financial Services Committee, had sent a letter to regulators expressing her concern with these servicers. And it's just been getting a lot of attention. FHFA was obviously interested in it. So I think we're going to be doing a more formal survey that we'll get out probably in the next few weeks. But I think this is going to be an important issue going forward, and one that we'll stay on top of and be looking for input from you folks on.
Yeah, and I mean, just to underscore what Matthew said, it was very interesting to actually go deep into the data that you provided. So it's interesting that Ocwen and PennyMac had kind of some love-hate relationships, both of which are servicers that are doing principal reductions, and so people do like that a lot, but also have servicing and delivery problems out there. The Ocwen call center came in for a lot of criticism because it's being outsourced to India, but that the people who are on the phone are often not well trained. There's sometimes a language barrier, and they are not deciders. So these people don't really fit the category of single point of contact, are not able to do more than a highly scripted resolution. So these are complicated issues, but Ocwen is also doing some very good stuff out in the field around principal reduction, and we think we'll do some more in the future. So the other thing that was really interesting to look at this, and you saw this across the board, that there were continue to be problems of lost documents. And this is something we have to document, this issue of lost documents. So people are thinking this has been solved, but your evidence from yours is that people are maybe better, but certainly we're continuing to have that problem. That was across the board on the servicers. There was problems, somebody identified a problem with dual track, and again, that's one that we really want to elevate and pursue. That there were numbers of problems of scheduling appointments with a SPOC and the SPOC wasn't there, or the SPOC was not responsive, not returning calls, not scheduling things, and that kind of that specific detail is exactly what we need to be telling the regulators. And I wish I could say when we deal with FHFA that they'll pursue each one of these. They won't, but they're part of this. They're looking for systemic problems, and this survey would help us identify those. So we'll do a more detailed one that will look somewhat more like the AG survey we did last year, and hopefully get a lot more granular detail on this. But very good, very quick. We really appreciate the fact that you turned this around so quickly. Having 60 responses means you really have. It was a good spread from around the country. It was very helpful. Okay, a couple of things that happened in the FHFA meetings. One was was on language access, and we have, as you know, been over the past year really trying to improve servicers' ability to work with people who aren't fluent in English, and that means everywhere from accepting financials that might have been written in a different language to accepting hardship letters in a different in the native language that people have, the preferred language. It's using the RMA, accepting the RMA when it's not written in English, if they use the Spanish version or the other language versions, all those kind of things. And then also that the services should track specifically what the preferred language of the family is in the client file so that they can match up a SPOC that's fluent. And if that can't happen, then refer to a counseling agency that could properly translate. The FHFA, we presented this to all the regulators last year. Many of you were part of those conversations, and have have gotten a lot of sympathy without a lot of traction. The CFPB had what seemed to be quite engaged on the issue during the servicing standards conversation, and then when the servicing standards came out, they were not in there, and they said they were going to do further study on it. We're now almost a year later, and as far as we know, no progress has been made on that issue. We took this to the OCC, the DOJ, FDIC, and the Fed, and no, we really don't have any progress to speak of from there. FHFA said that they were going to reply to these concerns at the meeting a week from Monday. And what they had done is they'd gone to the other federal agencies to see who has got some models that they could look at and evaluate, and they came back with nothing. So the good thing is I think that there's some feeling that they've I think they're feeling the pressure that we need to do something, and maybe this is the pioneering situation where something can get designed. I know that in conversations with people in national capacity, there's some precedents in the healthcare system that we need to look at. And if anybody's got any other good example, actually, this would be very helpful. If you're working with a local government or state government that has an excellent language access program, that would be good to know. And especially if you've got something in writing about it that's in their vocabulary, that would be helpful. We could always try to elevate that too. The other thing that was part of the FHFA conversation was the escalating cases, and Fannie and Freddie both had to come in and present on that. The Fannie presentation was completely off the mark, and really they just wanted to show off their website. It was really kind of a failure, and didn't put themselves in the best light. The Freddie one was more on point, and what was useful was that I know a lot of you have had frustrations with the Fannie and Freddie escalation lines. The director of the escalation line for Freddie said that if there's any problem that you're having interacting with the 1-800-FREDDIE number, that you can call her directly or email her directly. And I'm pretty sure one of those numbers, the second one, is her cell phone. You know, we said we would absolutely take her up on this. So this was posted on the listserv, but it's also, we're putting it up here again. So she's not a place you start. The person needs to, your complaint needs to be in the system. But if you're not able to stop a foreclosure on a timely basis, if a case is getting delayed too much, if there's a wrongful denial, if people aren't responsive on the phone line, you know, or say something inappropriate, you know, elevate to her, please. And what happens then, if that doesn't really work well, please let me know, because then I'd be happy to then take that to her and to FHFA. And I don't get involved in very many cases, but there are places where if I can elevate an issue, I'm happy to do it. So this would be one of those. Similarly, if you're having problems with the Treasury line, I've now elevated a few cases there, which got a very quick resolution, which should have happened on its own, but we got what we got, at least some progress on it. Okay, so so Matthew, we've got a couple webinars. We just should put people on people's calendars. What do we got?
So we've been doing the somewhat irregular series of kind of not specific to counseling, just more general informational sessions. So we're having the next in that series, which is the basics on online social networking for nonprofits. So you know, this is things like using Twitter, using Facebook, using these various tools that I'm not all that familiar with, that are, I'm sure, beneficial to all nonprofits that we all can probably do a better job of using. And that's going to be from Firespring. They've done a couple already for us, and we're very well received. So we're looking forward to that. That's going to be Monday, March 10th, and it will go from 3 to 4:30 Eastern Time. And then the second is, it's really part two, and I should have included that, or not part two. It's just the second session. It's going to be close to identical to one we did, I guess, 3 weeks ago now, on this new CFPB mortgage servicing standards. So this is the one we co-hosted with NCLR and Kathy Mansfield from CFPB and Odette Williamson from the NCLC, the National Consumer Law Center, did a nice breakdown of what's in the CFPB's new servicing standards that went into effect on January 10th, and really with the focus being on how counselors can use that. This is really intended for counselors, so we would encourage you to share the link with your counselors, encourage them to attend. We maxed out at 500 people last time. Is the most that we can get on a single webinar, but we had 700 plus register, so we know there's a lot of built-up demand for this. So if you weren't able to get on for the first session, we're hosting this one, and if need be, we can schedule another one.
Yeah, and so just to underscore again what Matthew had said on the CFPB one, so this is a repeat of the one we'd done month before, but and you might enjoy hearing it a second time. Instead of an hour and a half, we're actually blocking out 2 hours, so there's a little bit more time for questions and back and forth, and they won't be quite as crammed. So but we will be going over the same material that we did last time, and maybe strengthen it a slight bit because we've got this one down pat. But it should be a good and useful session. Certainly feel free to broadcast this widely to your staff and to networks. We'll have the we actually don't have the link for signing up for this one yet, but as soon as we've got it, we'll circulate it so you can circulate it to your staff and networks. Oh, and while I mentioned the word networks, so we can put this on the agenda, but if you're involved with a network, so not a local, it's a cluster of local agencies, and it might be a network of groups that meet every month in your city or county or metro area. It might be, there's a number of great statewide networks that are out there now, and there's some regional networks. We're happy to include anybody who's interested in being on the list. We have talked with HUD about doing a stakeholders meeting. They've been doing a series of these and trying to get the role of networks to be more recognized and supported by HUD. And a number of you have stepped up, and if you've contacted me here on the list, and we've given that list to HUD, but we've got we'll have a call with them scheduled for, I think it's March 7th. I put the wrong date on. March 7th is a Friday. But shoot me an email if you're involved with a network that would like to participate in this. We think it's a good opportunity. In some ways, networks are doing very high-quality work in supporting the counseling world, and not getting much recognition for it and support. And we wanted to sort of think about what the possibilities are, what might happen, and this is certainly the first step in that conversation. And you have many compatriots around the country. There's a whole range of groups that will be involved, and some of them will be very local, and some of them will be multi-state. And there'll be one national group at least. That's us. So the National Housing Resource Center is a network. So one extra plug there. Okay. I think, let me just remind you, we've had a surge in membership, people joining, organizations joining NHRC. We really appreciate it. We're out there to promote the long-term interests of the nonprofit housing counseling community. We are also interested in supporting staff and supporting managers and organizations, trying to think creatively about this stuff. This first year of building, we've really emphasized building our policy role and capacity, and we will always do a lot of work in that field. And we've spent a lot of energy in trying to build the communication networks, the listserv, and the webinars, and the calls. And in this coming year, we'd like to really see what we can do to increase the amount of membership benefits that are available to members and help build the industry and help, in some ways, reduce expenses, as well as we'll continue our work in trying to increase income streams that come to counseling agencies. So our membership form is on our website, and love to have you join. So we'll have we'll continue after our meeting in Los Angeles. So we'll look forward to seeing you in Los Angeles if you can come. We'll certainly do a wrap down in March about it and what we've learned from that, and hopefully it'll inform what we're doing throughout the year. Please feel free to fill out that survey. We want you to think big and want you to think small. We'd love some specific ideas. But keep up the good work. We appreciate it, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.